Welcome back. We're here again with Carlos Velez talking about his latest album, Songbook.
What's
And
up?
yep, great to have you here, Carlos.
Thanks, Jaden.
I wanted to start off before we get into going through the next few songs on the album. You told me before about how you made this decision to remove all your music from Spotify and everything, and wondered if you wanted to talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, it's in a way it's related to the AI stuff that's going on, but more specifically, it's really related to how Spotify is handling its relationship with the artists that supply music to Spotify. Um, I don't specifically have like a real anti AI standpoint about things in general. Though as time goes on, it sure seems more and more like the rapid increase in the use of AI is having a lot of harmful effects. It has negative impacts on the environment. It's eating up energy like crazy. That humans need. It uses lots and lots of water to cool the machines that get so hot from being fed all this energy to run these huge processors and da da da. It's a whole issue. But with Spotify specifically, they have there's a couple of like YouTube creators that I follow online that talk about some of the legal sides of indie music production. And I've seen some recent videos kind of diving into the like terms of service for Spotify for artists, and the the lengths that Spotify has gone to are just really upsetting. Like it, you know, they anything that you've uploaded to their service, whether that's your music or your profile image or any videos that you've created, as well as like the social media side of the platform, even for just regular users, non-artists. this is this kind of applies both to regular Spotify listeners as well as Spotify artists uploading music through to their platform. That Spotify, through their terms of service, owns literally everything, and can use it any way they want to without compensating the artist. So it's just kind of reached a breaking point for me where it felt like, gosh, if Spotify can take this song and remix it without my permission, if they can use it in advertising with my permission, if they could put my name and my face on it without my permission and not even give me any financial benefit for it, which there's not really much of a financial benefit anyway in these things, then it just felt like this is kind of a breaking point where it's just not worth it. Like I really appreciate the industry, like the ability to self-publish, not because it's a very lucrative option for artists. Artists don't really make any significant money publishing to places like Spotify and Apple Music and YouTube Music and stuff like that. But it's an unprecedented way of publishing your music and making it available to people in general. And for me, that is just really something special that I've appreciated about being able to publish music these last several years, is that I can I can publish it, I can share it with my family, my friends, my community. It's out there in a way that is readily accessible to people. There's other services like Bandcamp and SoundCloud, and prior to that you could have MP3 files and share them to your friends and stuff, but there's there's a difficulty in that of usage. If someone listens to music on Spotify and you tell them, "Oh, check out my music on SoundCloud," well, they're just not going to. Like, unless they are specifically a person who seeks out indie music in those kind of platforms, that disconnect is just going to be a barrier to that. But when I can say, oh yeah, it's on YouTube Music, just look up Scurvy Rickets, and they can just easily find it. They can integrate it into their playlists and share my music just like they would share anything else because it's already in their workflow. Like that functionality is very valuable to me. But with the decisions that Spotify has been making lately, or some of these things have been in place for a long time, but they're kind of coming to light more now because they're getting more scrutinized because of recent decisions that they've made. It just got to a point where I thought, I'm just going to remove my music from Spotify because they've just reached a point where they feel like they can do anything, get away with anything, treat artists however they want, and it's not going to matter because they're too big for anyone to say no. So I said no.
Yeah, and I've been seeing several other artists, especially indie artists, a little before and some after too, like making similar decisions and removing their music. And you already kind of talked about it a little bit, but I was going to ask about how, since you've removed your music and like how are you finding ways to still share and promote your music in ways now, like not having that big platform to share it on and make it so accessible?
I mean, the easy answer is that I don't. I'm not an artist who is hustling their art. Like, I didn't even, I'm a middle-aged man who doesn't use Instagram, doesn't use TikTok. Like, the only social media I have is Facebook. So, that's me and my generation. And I didn't even announce on Facebook that I finished this album and published it. Like, I'm not really. I'm a bad artist in that way. Like I'm bad at the business of art. I don't have the time or energy to put into that because the business of art is exhausting for me. I don't like to do it. So, I have a happy career that I make a good living off of and can support my family with, and I put my focus on working there. I enjoy my work. I respect the company that I work for, and that gives me the freedom to just make art for the making art of it. And when the art is done, like by the time I finished this album, I'm very like emotionally over the album at that point. Like it's my baby and I love it, but I'm ready for the next thing. So like the last thing I want to do is spend a lot of time and energy trying to convince people to listen to it, trying to convince people to buy it. Like, what does that even look like? I did print a small number of CDs for this, and that was important to me because I've gotten pretty disenchanted with music streaming. I still have it and I still use it on a regular basis, but increasingly I've started buying CDs lately. There's a CD player in our minivan, and I listen to CDs that I buy there. I bought a handful recently, which has been exciting. Kind of some classic albums that I could find for $3 or $5, like Bob Marley and Nora Jones and a handful of others, some Simon and Garfunkel and Tom Petty up in there. And these are albums that I've loved my whole life, but on streaming, it's like they're buried in a way that is almost not accessible. Like it takes a lot of work to get to these albums that you love because these algorithmic streaming services have a way of just feeding you what you've been listening to. And so it just puts you in this bubble that excludes so many other things that you love. Like, it's hard, you can't fit everything you love inside the bubble that an algorithm creates. And so then I just found these whole sides of myself musically being neglected. And it's in a it's a it's an aspect of that that didn't exist when I was listening to music on CDs, or even when I was listening to music on an iPod. Because on an iPod, when I had these massive libraries, I'm still scrolling through the whole iPod, scrolling through every artist till I find one like, oh, this feels like a Tom Petty day, and then clicking through and then scrolling through the albums to pick which album I want to listen to, and then listening to that album experience and having those songs be structured in a way that, like, structured in the album format that makes those songs this kind of collective storytelling piece. Like, those songs, the Wildflowers album is my favorite Tom Petty album, and I can remember different points in my life listening to that album. And I can remember middle school being on the couch in my living room in the apartment that I lived in, um, looking at the lyrics of it and listening to it. I can remember being on a road trip with Elaine, um, to Denver, listening to it. And those kinds of, like, concrete experiences of music have just kind of disappeared in the, like, I don't know, the, like, nebulousness of music streaming. So I just kind of been getting away from streaming and getting moving more towards listening to music on CDs. And I wanted to be able to have a CD of my music. And even though a lot of people don't have a CD player, I wanted to have a small collection of CDs so that when I run into someone locally, a friend of mine, or someone that I meet that's interested in what I'm doing musically, if they have a CD player, I've got a CD I can give them. And, there's maybe they do, maybe they don't listen to it, but I feel like there's something just more special about handing someone that physical case with artwork bigger than your phone that you can look at and then open and see more artwork. And then you see the CD and you look at the back and you can see the track list and all the other little bits of information on there. And there's just something special about that. There's even something special about putting a disc into the CD player and having it fail to read and spit it back out, and it takes a few tries and then it gets going. And I don't know, it's somehow with the CD, with the physical medium, it just feels more real. So my aim with CDs and with publishing music in general is really just to connect to my community. People in Topeka are who I care about hearing my music, and it's not even really that I'm trying hard to make people in Topeka listen to my music. Like I said, I even announced that it was done. Um, but it is done, and as I get involved in things with my community and as things come up, then that work that I have done helps to move things forward for me. Like, being asked to play at the Aaron Douglas Art Festival and playing through a set of these songs, meeting a lady that runs the Jayhawk Theater downtown, which is looking to, they're renovating their theater and they're looking to do events as they open up, and events along the way to help support funding the Jayhawk Theater. She was interested to hear that I do music and that I know other people that do music. And that's really what I'm looking for is, having a body of work behind me helps those kind of interactions to have something to build on, without, without published music, without a set of songs that I can fall back on, the opportunities that might come my way with people that I meet, you can't do much with them if you don't have work done, you know. So that's really my focus, is just getting work done, having songs finished, published, accessible, so that when opportunities come along, they're there for people to be able to dig into.
Yeah, so it sounds like despite not having your music on Spotify and not really promoting in a lot of ways, like you're still finding this way to build a core community around your music and find people who love and support it. And I think, as you said before about like the like how like albums used to kind of be different than they are now in a way, and kind of felt a bit more special, or like kind of told a story and were more like cohesive work in a lot of ways. Traditionally, like I think people who kind of feel that same way will likely enjoy your new album, because it, at least to me, like very much feels that way. Like it just truly feels like one cohesive album that really does tell a story, and it's just truly like a full experience to listen to. And
Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah, I think I started to hear this refrain, I think as early as maybe 2020 or so, of people talking about how the album is dead, streaming killed the album, because it became commonplace for artists to just publish single after single after single. And in a lot of ways, for popular artists, that was more rewarding to the algorithm, to their pockets, to approach music that way, to constantly be publishing new content, instead of waiting 2 years to finish an album and then publish 12 songs all at once or whatever. But even as I started to hear that as being the new paradigm in music, I also started noticing more and more creative albums being done. Like, especially when COVID hit, there was a number of artists that I followed that released some special kind of project within that next year or two, because I think a lot of artists missed the concept of a special album. Like Tedeschi Trucks is this like kind of blues rock band that I enjoy, that Elaine introduced me to, and they, as a band, they have the Susan Tedeschi and I don't know his first name, Trucks. He's the Trucks and Tedeschi Trucks. They're like a married couple that live on this like farm and have a studio out there. And during COVID, they had like their whole band was basically living together and playing music together and writing this album together. And they wanted something to do to kind of something non-musical to kind of tie them together, like to be doing something, because man, people were just like struggling to find things to do during COVID. So they read this epic poem, and I can't tell you the name of it, but epic poem like the Odyssey or something like that, and they were reading this poem together, this long story, and they all got so inspired by it that they wrote this album. It's really like a series of small, it's like a series of EPs, 4 of them, I think, that together make like 24, 28 songs, that are all inspired by this epic poem that they read together. Like, what a cool project, like that came out and I thought, don't tell me the album's dead. Like this, I've heard of more creative albums being done lately than I had before. Like Under Oath, this hardcore emo band, they did an album. They recorded an album, and then they did this kind of special release event where they did a live performance in this like warehouse, and they mic'd it up super carefully, and they performed it live. They recorded it, and it was like a high quality, like studio sounding recording of the live performance of the album. And the like videography for it was approached as if it was one big music video. So besides having this studio album recorded, they also had this really elaborate live performance music video representation of the album. It's its own thing, you know. Just like the amount of thought and attention going into an album, in some cases is just bigger than ever, because there's more than ever that an artist can do. And so, yeah, you know, some artists are not focusing on albums and they're just putting out single after single after single, and that's great. I don't really like taking in music that way. Like some of my favorite artists, I'll see a single come up and I'm just like, whatever, I'll wait 6 months till the album comes out, you know. Like I wanted it in album form. That's just who I am for whatever reason. But some artists are really leaning into the freedom that being an independent artist gives them to approach albums in ways that a record label might never green light, that they might not ever put the budget into doing, because they're like, who wants that, you know? But indie artists can do anything they want. Nobody can tell them no. So I think you've got more interesting albums happening than ever. It's kind of a renaissance in that way. And sometimes streaming just doesn't really give you that experience of it like you would get if you were putting on a record or putting in a CD, and marrying that physical experience to the cultivated experience that the album is meant to give the listener.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of my favorite bands kind of do similar stuff and have done some really creative, interesting stuff with albums. Like one of my favorites, 21 Pilots. Like they've for like the past 10 years or so have been really like telling a story and world building in a lot of ways with their past 5 albums, and have done extra creative things like outside of the album itself, with like telling the story through their music videos or even their live shows, and random little like they've done like online scavenger hunts and stuff that like really make get the fans involved and invested in the story and kind of build it piece by piece, and has been really interesting. And then also Sleeping at Last is another one of my favorite artists, and particularly his Atlas project has been really interesting, and he's been working on that for a long time, and it's quite like really complex and too much to talk about here, but like
I know like some of those albums are like or songs are related to specific celestial events, like this particular comet that was flying by on May 15th of 2014 or whatever. Like he's got a song like that's like related to that.
There's a lot of really interesting stuff he's been doing, and he's got a podcast where he talks about that project, and would be something that I'd highly recommend listening to, because it's really interesting, like the way he approaches music and builds his albums.
I've listened to some of those. He's really diving into the stories behind the music. Sometimes it's about the production of it, and sometimes it's about the inspiration for the story, or some mix of things. But getting that kind of insight into his process is always really interesting. He's a very thoughtful artist, puts a lot of intention into what he does, and yeah, I love that. I love that kind of stuff. Like, you know, everything doesn't need to be that, but it's a special kind of approach that I think the physical medium works better with in the long run. Yeah.
So do you want to get back into going through the songs?
Sure.
Last time we went through the first 3, so now we'll start off with song number 4, Well Enough Alone.
time. Don't need to stop on a dime. But now my hands being forced, 'cause when it rains and it pours, and all night I've been accused of a crime. Can't get my foot in the door, 'cause when it rains and it pours, of course, no one seems to mind the spinning head of mine. Can't find me silver lines. And if I can't make amends, then there's no room to forgive, and the thunder never ends. Then I'm shook, can't let myself off the hook. There must be some change in store for when the rain is a pour. And some night, if you have grace on your mind, I know it still won't be earned. 'Cause if it rains and it pours, of course, guess this is my life. I can't pretend it's not a down forevermore. And if I can't make amends, then there's no room to forgive, and the thunder never ends. Then it's fine. Can't make demands of your time for all the pain you've endured, 'cause when it rains and it pours, and in time I wish us both peace of mind, even without a cure, for when the rain is a pour, of course. No room to forgive, and the thunder never ends. Then I'll find a way to go, where the rain will someday slow and leave a well enough alone. But if I can't make amends, then there's no room to forgive, and the thunder never ends. Then I'll find a way to go, but the rain will someday slow and leave a well enough alone.
That one I think has some really fun production stuff and like really groovy sound and a lot of little fun like ear candy kind of stuff in there that really adds to it, I think.
Yeah, I think this is probably the song I had the most fun with that sort of thing. It's Elaine's favorite song, guitar-wise. Every time it hits the last chorus, where there's some extra guitar layers in, she's like,
those are
I love the
really cool.
guitars on this song.
And I think, but like shifting lyrically, I think it's, at least the way I interpret it, not quite as fun as the sound is. Like I like what I see in the lyrics is kind of, I mean, to put it simply, just like kind of about depression and stuff like that. Like I don't know if that's what you intended with it, but it seems like lyrically it's coming from a very kind of depressed and hopeless kind of state of mind. But I don't know if that's what you
Yeah,
intended. But
definitely so let me start musically and then
yeah,
transition to meaning here, because this song came from a very specific place, and that very specific place is a very specific chord. It's I believe it's a diminished chord, if memory serves me correct. And this came up because I had some friends over, and we were kind of challenging each other to write a song with some specific kind of prompt, right? And the prompt in this case was this chord, diminished chord, and it's as a guitarist, like I don't know a lot of complex chords. Um, I'm what you might call a campfire guitarist. Like I know all the basic chords, the open chords that everybody learns off the bat. And beyond that, I just kind of mess around. But my friend Joey Crowfoot, really amazing local artist and a much better guitarist than me. He was like, well, how about we use a diminished chord? You got to use a diminished chord in the song somewhere. I was like, sure, show me that. So he shows me how to play this chord, and it's like I've got to put my four fingers in this like particular arrangement that I'm not used to doing. So it's kind of a funky chord, and strum it, and I'm like, whoo, like that chord is spicy. It's the first chord of the song that,
yeah, I love that part.
and then it kind of there's like all this tension in that chord, and then it's followed by a chord that it kind of releases into. But the chord progression that I wrote around it just really was hitting on that tension in that chord. And then it followed by the ending figure where it does the dun dun dun, and then does the same kind of chord just a little further down on the neck. It's just this really tense, painful kind of chord. And the other thing that we tied to as a prompt was that it had to be rain related. And so that's where the line, when it rains, then it pours, came in. And I started writing the lyrics and finding my way with it. And as I said before, like I never really know what I'm writing about off the bat, but it becomes evident eventually. And for this song, it ended up finding its way into being about a situation where, as a young man in my 20s, I hurt someone I care about. I hurt a group of people I cared about, and that's not something I've ever been able to make right. And the fact of that matter has been kind of a never ending truth. It's always true that I caused them that harm, and that truth continues to bear fruit in the like complications of life and relationships. Like the consequences of that are ongoing, and there's nothing that I can do about that. And that is something that has to be accepted. It's a song that's wrestling with the very difficult truth that people don't have to forgive you. Nobody owes you forgiveness. And it's not our place to expect it. If we get forgiveness, that's great. But if we don't, that's okay. And this song, in the first verse, there's some like resentment and spitefulness. There's kind of that like initial defensiveness. There's, he's talking about how all night I've been accused of a crime. He's kind of taking this point of view of like, of this aggrieved party overreacting, taking it too seriously, wanting to be done with this already kind of thing, and kind of rolling his eyes and being like, when it rains, it pours, like is kind of there's kind of a bit of a sarcastic flair to that line in the first verse. And then in the second verse, there's this kind of idea of acceptance that like, okay, like, yeah, I fucked up and I got to make some kind of change. Like, I'm, there's this admittance to doing wrong and of needing to be able to make some kind of change in life. And hopefully, someday you feel like forgiving, that'd be great. It won't be earned. I won't deserve that forgiveness, but like, cool. And then by the third verse, it's like more time has passed, and there's kind of this letting go, when something like that happens, when something comes between people and hurts people like that, ultimately it's something everyone has to let go. You can't hold on to pain forever. So whether you got the apology that you wanted, whether you got the forgiveness that you wanted, no matter what side of it you're on, and no matter how well it did or didn't go, there has to be a grieving process and a closure process, and eventually a moving on. And that's kind of where that last verse is coming in, is kind of speaking to, these aggrieved people and saying, I wish you well. I hope you're good. I'm going to have to move on. Like, I can't keep carrying this, waiting for forgiveness, because you don't owe me forgiveness. And I've done what I can to grow and change, and I've got to move on, so I hope you find peace. I hope I find peace. I hope life's good for everyone involved, and man, sometimes when it rains, it pours. It's not good. It'll never be good, but hopefully we can all move on and be good anyway. It's a really hard thing to go through in a relationship, is to let a hurt be and not try to fix it when that isn't called for, and not, have expectations when those expectations aren't deserved, and to just let it be. Sucks, like, it sucks, but it's important. It's important to be able to do. Like, when you hurt people, they got a right to be hurt. And if they want to hold on to it their whole lives, they can. Like, it's legit. There's nothing wrong with that. Maybe that's not the best thing for them, but that's their side of it to deal with, and not yours. So, as the party that caused harm, it's just a thing you have to bear, and learn from it, feel the pain of it, grow through it, and when the time is right, let it go. And so the song was me trying to let it go, which is, it's an ongoing thing. Like, letting it go doesn't happen one day. But it's a thing I continue to try to work through, try to continue to like be at peace about it, hopefully build a bridge someday, in that regard. And if not, okay. So yeah, it's a rough song. It's a song with a lot of pain and no real closure exactly,
Yeah.
but it's a very, in the trajectory that we were talking about last time for this character in this album, this character that's very much me, but this feels like a fictional telling of many things that are real about me. This feels like a young man in his, mid 20s, maybe late 20s, like not real established in life, but getting enough established to be able to have real consequential harms like this happening in his relationships. And I think that's where this kind of middle section of the album digs in, is into now that this young man who we saw with a very kind of brash, ambitious attitude and sophistication now starts to come into an adulthood and starts to run into some of the pains and griefs of being young and dumb and, hurting yourself and the people around you because you don't know better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think when I listened to the song, what I got from it is I kind of saw my like self in my late teens. Like I kind of saw some of the same ideas, but more on a personal level. Like I kind of saw the song as more of a personal reflection and trying to find self-forgiveness and everything instead of like another outward group of people. And like me in my late teens, I like struggled a lot with depression and stuff and was constantly caught in my own head with all that stuff. And so I see a lot of these lyrics kind of reflecting things that I felt and thought then at the time, and feeling like this way I felt would never end and I'd never be able to get out of it. And that, like, I mean, like in there you say how like, no one seems to mind this spinning head of mine, can't find these silver lines. And like, and if I can't make amends, there's no room to forgive, and the thunder never ends. Like it just felt like this was something I had to do alone. Like no one else can help me. Other people don't seem to like know what's going on or be able to care as much as I do. And I can't see that hope in the future, like the silver lines or that light at the end. And it just feels like this storm will never end, but still trying to, in a way, try to find ways to push through it and get there, even though at the time feeling like it's just this like downpour evermore, as you say in the song, I think. And yeah, that's kind of the ideas I got from it when I listened to it. But it's, I mean, cool hearing how you had this completely different kind of idea going in with it. And I think that's a cool concept. You talked about how like when you do something to hurt someone, like they have the right to not exactly forgive you for it. Like I think that's kind of a cool and respectable perspective to have on that. And
Yeah, the way you describe it is spot on, especially that chorus. Like it's how it feels, like the as years go by, I want things to be different, and they're not, and it doesn't seem like that will ever change, and that's a difficult thing to keep reckoning with over and over again, and feeling like there's no silver lines, thunder never ends, it's just kind of this endless gray storm of misery around this dynamic, and that kind of thing can be definitely like a with your own self kind of deal. Like sometimes the hardest person to forgive is yourself, and so like this dynamic that I'm speaking about between me and these other people is very easily applicable to a relationship with oneself. That's half of the story, is the relationship with myself in this, is it's it's about, you know, their pain and their grief and their right to forgive or not forgive, and it's also about my pain and my grief and my how I respond and deal with that. And you know, there's the the balance in that, the taking on the pain of reckoning with the pain you've caused, is crucial. You know, um, I think it can be hard to hear that you need to forgive yourself when you feel guilty for something that you've done. Um, and um, and it can be, and conversely, it can be tempting to go straight towards forgiveness of yourself, because the pain of reckoning with what you've done can be overwhelming. And so this song is about dealing with both sides of that coin, going through the pain of reckoning, being honest with yourself, and going through that grief, not ignoring it, not downplaying it, not projecting or blaming towards the party that you hurt anything, um, but patiently going through all of that grief and pain and reckoning, and also allowing yourself the room for self-forgiveness and for closure and release, you know, from the issue, whether or not you get that forgiveness from the other party. It's a lot. Depression is very involved. For sure. Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to talk about with this song before we go into the next one?
Um, let's see. It was just a really fun song to work on. Musically, it's pretty heavy. And it was the first song on this album that I really did the drums for. So there's a very, very young drummer, Carlos, at work here. And I'm pretty pleased with how the drums came out, given how you know, fresh I was at trying to get drums done. Yeah, you know, I've definitely grown a lot since then and learned a lot, but I'm pretty happy with how the drums turned out, and how like heavy they sound when they need to sound heavy. You know, the toms hit just right, and it feels pretty good. So ended up being pretty proud of the production on this one.
As a drummer myself, I really do enjoy the drums on that song. They're a lot of fun.
Thanks. Okay, so next up is Sail on a Landslide. At a hungry age, not yet a man, I was thrust out in the world. I couldn't seem to understand just how to make it work, with none to speak but none to lead. Adrift in war-torn glory past, with eyes to see and ears to hear, but no one left to ask. How do you sail on a landslide? How do you sail on a landslide? How do you sail on a landslide? How do you sail? wisdom for my life, while another man, just as true, contradicted his advice. And I was left there more confused than I had been at the start, till the God they claimed threw their words away and said the truth was in my heart. How do you sail on a landslide? How do you sail on a landslide? How do you sail on a landslide? How do you sail? How do you sail on a landslide beneath the heavens' dome? How do you herald the end when you've only just begun? How to prepare for a victory when loss is all you've known? How do you sail, sail? How do you sail on the landslide beneath the heavens' dome? How do you herald the end when you've only just begun? How do you sail, sail? How do you sail, sail?
That one's one of my personal favorites there. And I think that like the title and what you say in the chorus there about the like how do you sail on a landslide is a really kind of interesting thing that really made me think. And of course, as always, I have my own interpretation on it, but that's like made me really curious to know what like brought about this song for you and what are you trying to say with this song in a way.
It's so there's this imagery in the song, sailing on a landslide. Like it's a contradiction in terms, the you're gonna get crushed under a landslide. Like
Yeah.
there's not a way to stay on top of a landslide and make your way safely down the mountain. Like that's not possible. And that's the contradiction that is really that's at the heart of the question this song is asking. And in the landslide is like the issue of like kind of generational trauma, like whatever ways our fathers struggled in raising us and teaching us and being an example for us, they've done the best that they can with the culture and the society and the fathers that they grew up with, who inherited pains and traumas from their fathers before them and their fathers before them. And so at this time in my life, I was really wrestling hard with this aspect of what we pass on to the next generation, and feeling like you can't stop it. If it feels like trying to stop a moving bus, you can't. Maybe you can slow it down at best. And maybe for the kids that you raise, they won't get the bus that's coming for them won't hit them quite as hard as it hit you. And if you can accomplish that, then you've succeeded. So yeah, that's kind of the issue at stake here is like this young man he's gotten old enough to reflect a little bit, and to just wonder like, how do I do this? Like the opening of the song is about being a young man, who's goes out into the world just kind of unprepared and not knowing how to be a man, and wrestling with, I learned this thing from this guy and this thing from this other guy, and I have respect for both of them, and their advice is contradicting, and how do I, this young idiot, how do I know what's right to do when people that know better than me can't agree and are messes themselves? Like, so that's it's this very isolated feeling, of feeling like there's no one, people are talking but no one has anything helpful to say, and there's no example to look to understand how to proceed through life, through manhood, through through relationships and growth in a way that isn't destructive or self-destructive. And so the narrator in the song is just left feeling like they're trying to stay afloat on top of this landslide that's just rushing away from them and threatening to overtake them at any point, and just wishing for some kind of like lifeline to help guide them through, to show them how to take this situation and turn it into, smooth sailing. So for me personally, there's a lot of religious connotation here as well, because particularly in the verse talking about the two different men that gave two different points of view and advice, like that was very much my experience as a young man, was being taught a lot of things about how to be good, and being taught those things by men who could not stop hurting everyone around them, and having the things that I was being taught be contradictory and be ineffective. Like I just ended up feeling like I have no example for how to like live as a man among friends and coworkers and partners and children in a way that's healthy and productive and not harmful. And so this was a very like, woe is me kind of time period of just like feeling like, dang, like this is just really missing in society, and from my personal experience, having any kind of example to look to. I think the stories we take in are very critical for these kinds of things. Like humanity teaches social lessons through stories. Even if you look to Jesus in the Bible, every time he taught anything, he taught it with a story, a parable. He didn't say, do this and don't do that. He said, there was this guy walking down the street and he got hurt, and these other guys walked by and didn't care, and the third guy did. Like that's how he approached things, was with stories. And when I looked to the stories that I had growing up of what it looked like to be a man, it was people like Tim the Tool Man Taylor from Home Improvement, who is just a bumbling idiot in every episode, who hurts everyone around him, is kind of a jerk. His wife, his like angel of a wife, tolerates him for God knows what reason, forgives him in the end, and then he does the whole thing over the next episode. Like, there was never any real growth. There was never any real like modeling of like how conversations should really go in real life and real situations. Like, all these stories were just kind of useless. They were all the same. You see the pattern in every TV show that I watched growing up. TV has changed in recent years, and I think there's a wider variety and better stuff out there to model some of these ways that we can interact with each other. But growing up, it felt like it was like a desert. Just every example that I had was an example of how to make it worse, even when that example was being held up as a good example. Like, the good examples were actually bad examples. Like, in reality, saying those things and behaving those ways actually causes more harm, not actually makes things better. And those are the good guys. Like, those are the heroes you root for, and like, oh, they're actually assholes. Like, there was a lot of reckoning with that as an adult. Even like 80s movies and stuff, you look back at movies with the young nerdy kid who wants to date the popular girl, but she dates the jerk jock instead. But then eventually the nerd gets the girl in the end. But the nerd isn't a good guy. He's a real creepy asshole through the whole thing. Like, it was really, there was a lot of reckoning I had to do with that through my adulthood, and then especially coming into living in a home with a family with children, that I'm now this like male role model figure in their lives. Like, regardless of what I do or don't do, everything I do or don't do is an example of how a man lives to these kids. Whether they look up to me or not, whether they respect me or not, whether they like me or not, every moment of everything I do is an example to them, for better or worse. And then looking around and just being like, oh man, I wish I had some examples. I wish I had some examples of how to do this in a way that's healthy and productive and not harmful. So yeah, Sail on a Landslide is just really like wrestling with that contradiction of the landscape that I've been provided, that my generation and every generation before it has been provided, being so rocky and difficult. And yet, as men, we just have to manage and try to find a way to not get crushed under it, and try to find a way to keep the people that you love from being crushed under it. And it's bleak.
I feel like a lot of that is kind of a common theme in some of your music, and like particularly ties into your song Role Model later on this album, and also Legacy from your EP a little while back. Like, they kind of all have some similar themes and everything, but kind of tell it in a bit of a different way. And so it'll be interesting to get into Role Model later and kind of see how that connects back to
For sure.
this one in a little while.
Those songs, I'm not sure how those songs relate in your chronology of my music, but those songs were not written far apart from each other. They were written within the same, year or two span, which was very much what this album is represents time frame wise as kind of these first few years of integrating with this family and being coming into this role as a person in these kids' lives, and all of the reckoning, lots of reckoning that I had to do as a result. I was for every bit of myself that I was like proud of for growing through in my 20s and 30s, as an individual and as a partner to a person that in a loving relationship, I suddenly found myself kind of starting all over in that process with being in the lives of young kids. Like, as much work as I'd done to grow and change, a lot of that suddenly goes out the window in the face of a relationship with young kids. It's all so very different, and it brings up so very many different parts of your history and baggage and trauma and everything. And it was, it was a jarring experience to kind of find myself like almost feeling like I was back 10, 15 years previous and being like, oh man, I've got all this stuff to work through all over again. Like, I felt like an arrived adult who was mature and like, capable and responsible. And then now there's kids, and oh man, like I've got to go through a bunch of this all over again because it's a whole new context that as a single person I hadn't been dealing with in my adulthood and now needed to. It was kind of desperate for resources and examples to show me what it means to, to be a man to young kids who depend on you, look up to you, all that.
Yeah, Role Model and Legacy have both been some of my personal favorite songs you've ever made, and especially lyrically, because like personally, like as a 22-year-old guy, kind of trying to find my way and like being an adult and a man and everything, like the things you talk about in there have like really helped me to kind of reflect on myself and my past and the like male role models I've had in my own life, and kind of see what positives I can take from them, and also like what negative examples they've set that I want to try to avoid myself. And so yeah, those songs have both been really important to me, and I think probably could be for other people too. And I think they're like really well thought out and written.
Thank you. They're very personal. And one of the, in Sail on a Landslide, one of the two men that I reference, learning things from, one of the things that he taught me that most stuck with me was to take the good and leave the bad. He was like, you're going to pick up good things from me and you're going to pick up bad things from me. Keep the good things and leave behind the bad things. And, that's when I wrote Legacy, I was very much in the anger and grief over what I didn't feel like I got from my relationship with my father. And then, writing that song was part of the process. And then later down the road, I came to, the being able to do that allowed me to come to the realizations of what his limitations were, how he did the best he could, what he did give me that I wasn't giving him enough credit for, and all these things. And man, it's tough. Like, it's when you are feeling hurt, it's easy to see the person who hurt you as this two-dimensional character, and to they're all good or they're all bad, and growing up, our parents they start out all good, and then as we get older and we start to realize that we start to see them mess up, and we start to see them hurt people, hurt us. We start to see how they are inadequate when they fail, and then suddenly they go from being these people that we admire and respect, to know everything and do no wrong, to being terrible and failures, and just like the worst of the worst of the worst. And then eventually, hopefully, you come to realize that, oh, actually they're just humans like everybody else, and if I held myself to the same standards that I've been holding him, like, I would also be the worst jerk in the world. And okay, I guess like things are a lot more complicated and people change and everything is, it's just, you got to have grace for everyone. You got to have grace for yourself. There's a lot to reckon with there. And I guess that's the word of the day, reckoning. It keeps coming up. I guess that's what this part of the album is a lot of reckoning. And so this song is really reckoning with the lack of examples and resources for men, especially for young men, to find their way into the world and be a healthy presence in their own life and in the lives of the people around them.
So really quick, I want to just add like how that lyric of sailing on a landslide, like at least what I got from it, like I think was kind of accurate and added to in a way by what you said. Like when I heard how do you sail on a landslide, what I kind of translated that to in a way was like, how do you sort of make the most of a bad situation, or how do you like find a way to push through something that feels impossible, or find hope when it seems hopeless, like or like in this example how you've talked about with like these role models and everything, like how do you find who to be in a good way when you've only had like these negative people to look to and everything. And yeah, I just think this is overall a really interesting song. And
I think the bridge especially, gets into the expectations put on young men. You graduate, you leave the house, and you're expected to start making your life. Gotta get the education, get the career, get the girlfriend, get the house, get the babies, and so the bridge really leans into that idea of just like, how do I do this? What is it? How do you sail in a landslide beneath the heaven's dome? How do you herald the end when you've only just begun? Like, which is, kind of getting at like, how can you expect me to know what I'm doing, know where I'm going, what my 5-year plan is, what I'm going to accomplish, and how the next lyric is how to prepare for the end when you've only
how to prepare for a victory when loss is all you've known.
How to
I really
prepare
like
for
that.
victory when loss is all you've known. Like, I think for a lot of young men, it can just feel like you've been dumped off in the middle of nowhere with nothing, and you're expected to start building an empire, and it's like, what? You're looking around like, what, are you kidding me? Like, can you give me something to work with? Like that idea of just like, trying to make your way as a young man, and just feeling like there's nothing for you out there to get going with. There's all these expectations, but no examples, no support.
Yeah, and I'd say like coming off of A Well Enough Alone, where you kind of said how it ends off without really a real resolution or kind of getting to a better place. It kind of just leaves off in that darker place. This one, I think, doesn't exactly like give that resolution in a way. Like it still kind of leaves you wondering and hanging around wondering where to go from here in a way, but it's like starting to kind of move in that direction of like trying to get to where you want to be and start to address some of these things that you might be dealing with, whatever they are, and start
Yeah.
moving in that direction. And I think then kind of gets to a better place of some resolution and some self assurance and everything going into the next song too. Like,
Yeah, there's no real like resolution in this song, but there's the catharsis. It's the beginning, you know, like the 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 first step is admitting there's a problem, you know.
yeah,
This is that first step of looking around and going like, "Wait a minute, like I'm struggling and this isn't all my fault." You know, like something needs to change here, and there's kind of that you know, this moment where there's not a solution yet. You don't know what it is, but you know that something's wrong, and it's not all on you. And there's kind of this bit of a relief and a catharsis from acknowledging that, you know, until you know that there's a problem and until you've defined what the problem is, you can't do anything to fix it. Everything that you're doing is operating in the wrong paradigm, so it won't work, but it can make things worse. You know, so this is kind of that moment of clarity to stop going down this path and start trying to go down a new path with a new framework for what is wrong and what it's going to take to, you know, be able to start to figure out what it's going to take to get there.
you've got to like start asking some questions before you can start looking for answers to them. And I mean, this song definitely asks a lot of questions.
100%.
Kind of gets you going in that direction to start finding some answers.
Yeah, if you know what the question is, that will often lead you to the answer. Like,
Yeah.
at work, a lot of times I'll not understand programming stuff, and I'll be like struggling with something, and I can't understand why it's not working, and then I'll start messaging my boss to be like, "Hey, this thing's doing this, it's doing this weird thing, and I don't understand, and you know, here's what I've got, and here's what I did, and this thing's giving me back this piece of information, and when I give it here, it does this," and then as I'm explaining it to him, then I find the answer. And I never send him the message. He might see that like Carlos has been typing for 20 minutes, you know? But because I finally because I have to ask him the question, and it's not just a nebulous question in my mind, then I can frame it all in a way that organizes it better, and then it points at the answer. So, you know, a lot of times just acknowledging that there's an issue and then asking the right question about it can be the hardest part about fixing something, about, you know, moving through something. Is just those beginning stages to recognize that this isn't right and why is that, you know, and to be able to move from there.
So how did this song kind of come about musically for you and with the production and everything?
I wrote this song in Georgia on a vacation. It started with the riff, the first part that you hear, and it has this descending figure to it. And this is something I see in my music a lot, is that it's not intentional, but then I see the parallels, like how the music ends up in some way representing what the lyrics are saying. And so that arpeggio that is being played on the acoustic guitar, it just kind of keeps descending down, 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 down. And then much, much later on, when I got into production mode years later with this song, I added the electric guitar and kind of took the same approach with the lead guitar playing figures that mostly kind of descend downward to kind of give that landslide effect. And this might be, in some ways, this is a song I struggled with the most production wise. The drums were kind of a problem to figure out. And the verses, it's I at first I did not do drums on this. I did percussion with a cajon, which is still in the song. You hear the cajon on the verses, and I had them on the chorus, and then eventually recorded drums as well, and had drums also going. But I like on the verses, I just did cymbals on the drums to leave the cajon kind of filling the bass and snare rolls. And then and it was not working, and I didn't really know why, but I ended up fixing it by removing drums. And that's always a good feeling when there's a problem and the solution is not adding but subtracting. The usually choruses, especially in rock and roll, get bigger. They get louder, they get more intense. But on this song, they get smaller. And that was the moment that it suddenly worked, was when I pulled drums out, and I changed what I was playing on the electric guitar, and also just how loud it was and stuff, so that the chorus got smaller instead of bigger. And then it suddenly felt right. The verses have this tension. They have the cajon going with the bass and snare sound, and then and that's where all the tension is in the lyrics. And then in the chorus, it's just asking, how do you sail on the landslide? It's just asking that question. It's like the person is stopping and taking a breath, and just not being consumed by all of the doubt and anxiety going on in the verses, but stopping and taking a moment to just look around and ask, like, what is going on? And so it's kind of a breather, the chorus is. And so that was kind of when the song clicked for me. And I was able to then press on towards finishing the production on it. That obviously gets us into the bridge, where then it comes in with the full drum kit and the full rock and roll sound, the big loud guitars, the big loud drums. And at that point, it's going from this stopping and questioning what's going on, to then kind of the cathartic rage of it. It's like then the guy is screaming basically about the injustice of it. How do you expect me to do all this with no resources, no example? That's kind of the vibe. And so I think the big powerful music at the end gives this catharsis to the tension of the verses and the release of the choruses. And I think that's, as you were kind of acknowledging, that kind of pivotal moment, where it gives the young man a step to take in a new direction, to get this rage out about it, so that there's a clarity of mind to then move on from. So it's always really interesting to see how the music reflects the story and how the production does. These things aren't different, and they shouldn't be. And when they come in alignment, you feel it in the music. And when they're not in alignment, something feels wrong, and it can be hard to figure out why. why doesn't it feel right? And it's because, you're doing too much here and you need to do less, or, the production is putting the focus on the wrong part of the song that's not supporting what that part of the song is meant to do. And sometimes a lot of this is just stuff that I figure out after it's done. Intuition goes a long way to bringing these things together, because we absorb stories our whole life, and music is stories, and production is stories, and it's this whole process of making this music is storytelling. So, if you were to pair up random music with a random scene in a movie or a TV show, it wouldn't feel right to you. You might not know why, but you would know that it felt weird. And so I think with, production and songwriting and arrangement, choosing instruments, choosing what parts happen where and when and why, some decisions work and some don't. And when they don't, it's because it's getting those things out of balance with each other. And it's not super conscious. It's very intuitive, but when it's done, it can become easy to then see how these things relate, how the lyrics and the music, the melodies, the chords, the rhythms, the production, how they work together for all the same things,
Mm-hmm. I think that really did come through in this song well, and was really interesting to hear. And I think that's really admirable in a way, how much you really thought through that process and were able to find a way to make the music itself reflect the story you're trying to tell. And is there anything else you want to talk about with that song before we get into the next one, or ready to jump on into it?
No, I don't think I've got anything else on that. I did want to mention on the previous song, one thing I thought of that was just something I was pretty proud of and thought was cool, is the chorus, and how the first two times that you hear the chorus, there's the first stanza and then the second stanza. And the second stanza ends with a question that then leads into the second verse and the third verse. But then the last time you hear the chorus, it starts with that second stanza and then finishes off with a resolution to that question that never got answered earlier. Choruses are typically the same throughout a song. And so whenever you choose to make them different, that's always that can be a bad call or a good call, depending on how it goes. And that's just what I'm kind of proud of personally on how it came out. Starting that last verse with the second half, starting the last chorus with the second half of the chorus and then continuing from there was just kind of a cool little effect.
Yeah.
So, all right, you ready for Knew the Words?
Yep.
You've come back. You've come back. You've come back. You've come back. So mince my words, then you gotta get back. You've come back. You've come back. So waste my pearls, then you gotta get back. Well, I knew the words of your breakdown. I knew the words of your shakedown. I knew the words by by their sin. I knew the words, I knew the words, I knew the words that you held back. I knew the words that you let smack. I knew the words that you meant. I knew the words, I knew the words. Come back, if you've come back with sticks and stones, then you gotta get back. If you've come back, if you've come back to fix my world, then you gotta get back. I knew the words of your breakdown. I knew the words of your shakedown. I knew the words by their sin. I knew the words. I knew the words. I knew the words that you held back. I knew the words that you let smack. I knew the words that you meant. I knew the words. 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 Yeah, I knew the words. I knew the words. Yeah, I knew the words. Well, I still recall that fateful night. The same old thing, but a whole new light. Powerless like the weeping of maelstrom. Found my best as you said your worst. And turned my back on your world of hurt. Ain't much good to say, but I can say, oh hell no.
That one's definitely one of my favorites to hear you perform live. That one's a lot of fun, and
I get into that one, man.
yeah,
That's a favorite in this house. Elaine and West just they love singing along with that song. It's their favorites by far.
yeah. I think it's just such a powerful song, both musically and lyrically. Like, it's like feels really anthemic in a way, and is kind of that cathartic release after some of like the past couple of songs in a way, I think. And
Yeah.
I'm sure this one was a lot of fun to like create and record and everything too.
Yeah, this is one of my proudest songs. Like I think it's one of the best songs I've ever written musically and lyrically. The guitar part is really fun to play. Like that's part of what gets me going live, is just like that guitar part's really fun to play. It feels good. It feels like it's got a lot of attitude, and the song's got a lot of attitude. And so the music really supports this, like this kind of there's this resistance in this song to this there's a conflict, there's a confrontation. The song is kind of the opposite of A Well Enough Alone. In A Well Enough Alone, the character has hurt other people that he cares about and can't make amends. And this song, which is based on a real life event with a real life friend of mine, it was it's kind of the opposite, where that is a turning point for this character, where in this conflict that's going on, they show up in a healthy way with boundaries. You know, the turning point in this character's life, this song is a turning point in their story, and it's a turning point in their life because it's the first place where they've stepped up and put down some healthy boundaries. And that boundary is to protect themselves against a friend who is hurting them. And that boundaries go both ways. It protects the character and it protects that friend that was causing the harm. And you know, sometimes the best thing that you can do is say no more and goodbye. And that's, you know, unfortunately where this song gets to. It's, you know, the verses are all about, you know, the verses were kind of, it's not something that happened, the idea that this friend came back, you know, but it was something kind of looking ahead, like if they were to come back with, you know, more argumentation, mincing my words, if they were to come back wasting my pearls, like to talk through all this stuff more but not value what I have to say, if they're going to come back with sticks and stones, you know, being attacking and being hurtful, they're going to come back trying to fix my life, trying to, you know, correct me. No, like just no to any of that. And then the chorus has, you know, the refrain, I knew the words, all these different ways, you know, and it kind of gets into all these ways that people can try to control you, you know, kind of try to, in order to protect themselves, can project a lot of things, can be manipulative, can be, you know, can show up a lot of different ways that are ultimately harmful, you know. So the chorus goes through the, I knew the words I knew the words of your breakdown. Do you have the words
Shakedown.
there? I knew the words of your shakedown. Yeah. Like, you know, breaking down for sympathy, shaking down for, like, you know, manipulation. I knew my favorite is I knew the words by their scent.
Yeah.
You know, kind of that crossing of senses with this idea that, like, you know, that there's this familiar pattern behind what you're coming at me with, and I don't like it. It's not healthy. It has a stink to it, you know.
And then, like, after that, I knew the words that you held back, like even the things that they're not saying, you can still know what their intentions are in a way, and like you already kind of know what's coming before it's there. And,
Yeah.
And then the ones that they let smack, you know what they are gonna outwardly say, and
Yeah, sometimes you'll be in a conversation and someone can go from being meek and what's the word? You know, where they're trying to curry your favor to then suddenly being vicious on a dime, you know, and that's kind of where that was coming from with the words that you held back, the words that you let smack. Like, you know, these things show up in so many different ways, and sometimes, you know, all this stuff can happen in one conversation sometimes.
And I think my personal favorite part lyrically is they're like at the end where it says, found my best as you said your worst. I turned my back on your world of hurt. It ain't much good to say, but I can say, oh, hell no. I love those lyrics. Like, kind of through this person's, like, negative impact that they're kind of having on you, you kind of find yourself in a way and kind of begin to find that self-assurance and confidence, and being able to set those boundaries, as you said, and like kind of start letting go of the negative things so you can find who you want to be in a more positive way, and can begin to turn your back on on your past, or these whatever negative things it is that you have and are holding you back, and just leaving that all behind so you can get to a better place in a way. And
Yeah.
yeah, I really like the way that song ends.
Yeah, it was, that bridge that you're talking about, like that was a specific night for me where, there was this friend that I had that, he was someone I looked up to and admired, and he enjoyed being looked up to and admired. And, that was like, I think we had a dynamic where he did not, where he, I don't think he really understood truly what I brought to the table, like my intelligence and my creativity and my wisdom. I don't think he saw me as much as a peer as someone beneath him. And that was generally fine. Like, I don't mean to say that he had no respect for me or that he disrespected me, but I don't feel like he valued me as a resource. I don't think he looked up to me like I looked up to him. And in this conversation, in this time where both of our lives were blown up train wrecks for our own different reasons, in this conversation, in his life, he was spinning out and hurting everyone around him. And he had me being a good and supportive friend when I too needed a good and supportive friend. And it it went badly. And the same way that he was lashing out at everyone else around him in his life for things that he did to me as well. And there was a point in the conversation where I just felt the paradigm shift between us, where suddenly he was smaller and I was bigger, and I realized I realized that where he was at, he had to be destructive. Like he couldn't not be destructive. He couldn't hear me. He couldn't hear what I was saying. He couldn't value the friendship and trust that we had built over the years, in order to change how he was behaving, because he was so caught up in his own pain and grief, and in so intensely trying to avoid it, that he was having to spin out lies and spin out pain so that he could keep the truth away, basically. And that, that's what this song really is getting at, is kind of that wild, that kind of wild behavior of a man trapped in a corner who has no way out of it except, the truth, but unfortunately can't and won't do that, and will instead, kind of lean into every other possible way of denying the truth, whether that's attacking, whether that's manipulating, whether that's rewriting history, all these things. And, in that bridge and in that moment, the character and me and my memory, like realizing this is where this person is and I can't be a help. It isn't possible for me to help. What I can say is, hell no. Like, I'm not going down this road with you and walking away. Sometimes that's the best that you can do. And it's far from a like triumph, of a turning point. I think it's easy to want, stories where, the where you learn your lesson and suddenly you're doing everything right. But I think it's more, when things start going right, it typically looks more like this, where it's not that things are going right. It's that now you're dealing with everything that's going wrong in a way that's beginning to be healthy. And that always starts with boundaries. And that's what this song is to me, is like suddenly learning like, oh, boundaries are important, boundaries protect. And by doing this, I'll give myself space to keep going, to grow, to move on, to, and hopefully to allow them that same space, and to not, in a Well Enough Alone, the character really wanted to be forgiven, and had to come to terms with the fact that you might not be forgiven. And in this song, it's kind of in the other direction, where he wants to be able to help, he wants to be able to support his friend and be there for him, but has to accept the truth that he just can't. You can only help people who want to be helped, and for them to want that, they have to be able to reckon with the truth themselves. They have to be able to go through the kind of reckoning that talked about in A Well Enough Alone, where you go through that pain, you go through that grief, and you're willing to hear the truth, even though the truth hurts, and when someone isn't there, no matter how much you love them or care about them, and no matter how much history you have, and no matter how much grief it may cause, you can't force them. And so sometimes you just got to put up the boundary and walk away and keep that harm from getting worse. It breaks the relationship, but it protects the relationship from becoming more poisoned, for being an ongoing poison for both of you. And hopefully, if things work out eventually, great, but they don't always.
Yeah, I think that it's a lot of really great stuff there, and a really special song in a lot of ways. And are you ready to go on into the next one?
Sure.
All right.
Okay, so this last song is track 7, called Say What. Say what you know and know what you mean. Be free with your thoughts and share all your dreams. Be strong in your voice and be kind in your words. Be sweet with your sweetheart and sing like the birds. Say what you're thinking and tell what you feel. Always let truth speak. words can heal. A song with no rhythm, a bland melody, a waste of a lyric with no voice to sing. But that only counts if you give it a goddamn try. Afraid she'll scorn you, but you know that's a goddamn lie. Be warm with your greetings, give hopeful goodbyes, laugh with your belly and even more with your eyes. Be quick with a compliment and slow with critique. Be careful of bitterness when your tongue's in your cheek, 'cause she can feel it when you don't mean what you say. And oh, she'll feel it in the way you say her name. Say what you know and know what you mean. Be free with your thoughts and share all your dreams. Be strong in your voice and be kind in your words. Be sweet with your sweet thing and sing like the birds. Sing like the birds.
Can't hear that one without like getting a bit emotional, but like in a really good way. Like that song just, I feel like, opens up like really well, like opens up the listener to like be vulnerable and like really listen in on these words and let it kind of have an impact on them. And I really like how you chose to write this song in a way that sounds like addressed to the listener, really like pushes them to think or like reflect on themselves and all this stuff in a way.
Yeah, this is an important song for me. It's I said that last song is a turning point, but this is the song where this is the song where things start to get good. There's a very different feel in the album from this song on, where the middle was very dark. We made it through. It gets lighter from here.
Yeah.
But this song, like, it's the oldest song on this album. And this is a song where when I wrote this, it's like I was parenting myself. This was before kids were in the picture. But it was kind of me reflecting on everything I'd learned up to that point about relationships and about communication. And that's a big deal. It wasn't intentional, but I have heard and seen, reflecting back through this album, how much reference there is to speech, to what people say, to what I say, to how to how people are impacted by speech, or lack thereof. And so when I wrote this song, it was me kind of telling myself all the things that I wish someone had told me in a way that I could understand, growing up, talking about all the TV shows that I watched with all the dumb husbands who couldn't do anything right and couldn't even apologize. Well, this is this is what I wish those stories had told me. And that was speech was something that I struggled with as a young man. Like, I was always very shy, and in my first real relationship, long-term relationship, whenever there was an issue to talk about, whenever one or both of us was upset, I struggled so hard to say anything at all. And it was, I would sit there and I would cycle through in my head a sentence over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. I would cycle through it literally dozens of times. The words were there, but I just wouldn't say them.
I've definitely done that a lot too.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do. It's I think a lot of times when people say they don't know what to say, that's not true. We do know what to say. There are words in our brain. Our brains aren't blank. Our brains are blank. Our brains are going in a circle because we're afraid to say the thing that's in our brain. We're afraid to say how we feel. We're afraid to ask this question. We're afraid to give this compliment. We're afraid to, whatever the scenario is, we're afraid to say it. And it can be all manner of things. And that's kind of, I think this song covers a wide breadth of things to say. But that it started with that first lyric, say what you know and know what you mean. That just came out in my head. I started playing that guitar riff and just started humming along, and that's the lyric that came out, was say what you know and know what you mean. And that really spoke to who I was as a young man, struggling to say this sentence that I was going in a loop over. I knew it. I knew the thing to say, but I was afraid it wasn't the right thing. I was afraid that it wasn't going to come out right, and I would try to figure out the best way to say it. And figuring out the best way to say it and not saying it was so much worse than saying it in an imperfect way. And it took a long time, years of this kind of thing, and of pushing myself to just say the thing that was in my head, and learning that by doing that, it doesn't have to be right. It just has to move the conversation forward. And then in the conversation, through the back and forth, by trusting the other person with my words and my thoughts, and by trusting myself enough to share them, that we could together work through whatever it was I was afraid of, and didn't have to be afraid, by just saying what I know to say, and knowing what I mean by that, it just began to solve so many problems in my life. To just say it out loud, just spit it out. So yeah, that was, kind of me trying to, kind of after having learned this lesson, going back and trying to tell my younger self this, in a way.
Yeah, and I think kind of coming off of those other songs that you've talked about that have like go into those topics of the negative role models or whatever you've had and all that, like to me it's really cool having this song where you kind of take then the lessons you've learned and kind of offer yourself as a role model in a way to the listeners, like giving them the wisdom you've kind of been able to develop in your own life, on from then, like from those negative things, kind of finding the positive and figuring out who you are, and then being able to offer up those life lessons you've picked up along the way and kind of then put these out for the listener. And it's been that's part of the reason this song is so special to me, because it like those things you talk about like are things a lot of times in here that are lessons I needed to hear, and things that then after I hear them in the song I'm like they really resonate with me, and I'm like, this is something I want to try to change about myself and do better, more accurately to how you describe in the song. And there's just a lot of great lyrics in there that really really stand out to me and kind of inspire me to try to be better in these ways. And I really like how that song
What do you
does all
like in
that.
there?
Pretty much every lyric in there, but um I mean, even just that beginning part of what you're saying about like say what you know and say what you mean, be free with your thoughts and share all your dreams. Like as I said, like that's something I struggle with a lot, and have in the past and have been trying to work on more recently. Is just kind of saying what I think. Like I keep a lot inside to myself and don't really always share what I'm thinking. And when I'm asked to share what I think, like how you said, like being a knowing what to say but being afraid to say it, like
Mm-hmm.
that's something very true. And then um, going on a little later, like in that sort of second verse part, like uh, I really like that part where it says the thought only counts if you give it a goddamn try, and a friend she'll scorn you, but of course you know that's a lie. Like knowing like that idea of like the thought only counts if you really give it a try. Like there's always been a lot of things I have intentions to do and thoughts that I want to change for myself, or sometimes maybe I'll do something to hurt someone and I have this thought of regret or wanting to make it better, or these dreams I have for myself that I want to achieve, and all sorts of different kinds of things, and just kind of keep it there at this as this thought. And I mean, kind of, I think this kind of connects to the one of the main concepts of my first poetry book, maybe someday, where I'm like, it was a lot of having these ideas and thoughts for myself in ways I want to improve myself, for these dreams I have and all these things I want to do in my life, but just kind of pushing them off and saying like maybe someday, like
Yeah.
maybe it'll just happen, like maybe I'll get there eventually, but not really making an active effort to bring about these changes in my life. And I really like how that lyric then is like saying like you have to give it a try, or it means nothing. Like if you're not actively doing anything, like
Yeah.
you really got to go out and do something if you want to make these changes. And
Yeah. That's that's a facing of fear there. That's critical. And, that for me, that came from a trope that was very common in my life. I saw a lot of movies like this growing up, and it's very much who I was as a middle school, teenage, high school kid, where I'd like some girl, I'd have a crush, and I'd spend a whole semester just like feeling it so hard and like staring
mhm,
across the classroom at this girl that I like, and feeling such intense feelings and writing poems about my intense feelings. And because I have these intense feelings, I feel like we should be together, but I would not actually talk to this girl, tell them that I think they're cute, ask them to spend time together, hang out, be my girlfriend, any of that. Like, would just totally shut myself down. And that was so at war with this, like, inner, raging, intense, obsessive like for this other person, you know? And you see that in a lot of movies, and in the movies somehow it works out, but in life it doesn't. You know, in life, when you don't speak up and say, "Hi, I'm Carlos," you know, nothing actually happens. And so, you know, that's kind of where that lyric came from for me, was like, gosh, like I wish I could have just got over myself as a kid. And and you know, even my 20s, there was still this very much this dynamic. I was protected from that to a degree. I was protected from that by being in a long-term relationship in my 20s. But I got into that long-term relationship before I'd ever addressed that. And so when I found myself single again at 29, I had to face this issue again. You know, like throughout my 20s, whenever I was around a young woman that I was attracted to, and I was able to kind of protect myself from that, because it's not like I could pursue a relationship with them anyway. I was in a committed relationship and happy there, and wasn't trying to find a girlfriend, but it still meant that I had these strained, awkward dynamics between me and young women that I had, that if I not been in a relationship, I would wish that I could pursue something with this person, you know? And so I was just still in my 20s, and even in that relationship, still very uncomfortable in my own skin, not being able to just talk to a girl, to a woman that I found attractive and liked, you know?
And I think that can kind of tie into that second line there, where it's like, afraid she'll scorn you, but of course knowing it's a lie. Like, kind of having those fears and kind of getting all in your head about the possibilities and all the risks about if you pursue whatever the thing is, or the person, or whatever. It's like you create all these imaginary scenarios of it going wrong, and you're afraid of all the like negative outcomes there could be, and think all about that. But then knowing, of course, that's all just a lie you made up in your head. Like, the reality probably won't be as bad as you're making it out to be in your head. But if you just go out there and do it instead of obsessing over it in your head, like, you're probably going to end up with something much better than you could have imagined. And
100%.
even if it does end up being not anything great and was kind of a failure in a way or something, like, likely may not have been as bad still as you had imagined. And even if it does end up bad, like, at least you gave it that try, and like took that risk, and can then go and take another risk in another way and try something different if that doesn't work out. But if you just sit there thinking about it all the time, worrying about it, you're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah, that kind of risk taking is a muscle. It's something you have to exercise. And you know, when you exercise a muscle, you break it. It hurts.
Yeah.
You're literally breaking the muscle and causing it pain. And then it heals up when you sleep that night. And then the next day you are stronger, you know. That's the process. And so, you know, taking those risks and introducing yourself, asking questions, showing interest, being vulnerable takes courage. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of strength. And you're going to be rewarded for it quite a bit of the time because most people are pretty nice, it turns out. All the things we're worried about that people are going to do tend to not be what they do. They tend to just actually be pretty nice. And maybe the girl doesn't want to kiss your face and have your babies. That's okay. That doesn't always happen. She doesn't have to. Just because you like her so intensely doesn't mean she has to like you back. But by putting it out there, it gives the chance for something to happen. Maybe nothing happens, but if it doesn't, it gives you the opportunity to heal from it, move on, and put that muscle to work again in a new situation, and that new situation wouldn't be open to you as a person if you were still back here obsessing over the first one, and so whether or not these things work out, they always go well in the end. They always lead to moving forward and to progress, and you become more comfortable as a person, recognizing that everyone else is just people too. When you hold it back and you're afraid to talk, it builds up this other mythological person that you don't actually know into something way more than they are. And so you don't get a chance to get to know the real them because you're just obsessing over this imagined version of them. And no one is who we imagine them to be. They're who we discover them to be through those interactions. So, just sucking it up and getting over yourself and making that connection, having the conversations, just getting to know people that are people, and it does so much more, whether it leads to a girlfriend or not, or whether it leads to a friend or not. That kind of thing's always better, and that was a thing I struggled so hard with, and like I said, I had to reckon with in my very late 20s and early 30s, kind of figuring out how to date as a person who hadn't really dated. I'd had girlfriends in high school, but they just kind of happened to me more than I pursued them, and that's not a good way to go about relationships. Like, letting relationships happen to you is a good way to have relationships that you're not happy in. And so that was a thing I had to reckon with in my late 20s, and had to, make myself take steps to reach out to people, to approach people in person and talk to them, to send texts and make phone calls and ask girls out, and just be vulnerable and take the risk that they might say no, and some of them did, or might say yes, and maybe I find that date exciting, and then that's as far as it goes, and then having to deal with that disappointment, but it was all very it built me up. Like, even if it hurt, it built me up into a person that I was holding myself back from being, by not being vulnerable, by not reaching out to other people. So I took on dating as kind of a challenge, trying to be honest with myself about what I was insecure about, and then challenging myself to take some kind of action against that particular insecurity. And to do that by dating, just by casually dating people, getting to know them, and working on myself to become a person that I wanted to be, and that you know, the woman that I might fall in love with would want to be with.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is why those lyrics there are some of the ones that stand out to me most, because a lot of the stuff we've talked about is stuff that I personally have struggled with a lot myself, and these lyrics are such a great reminder to me to challenge myself with a lot of that stuff and try to do better in a lot of these ways. And I can be such a hardcore overthinker a lot of the time, and it that can often hold me back in a lot of ways. And so more recently I've been trying to break out of those habits and try to be a bit more active in my own life. And it's, of course, as you said, like it being sort of a muscle, like it's been really hard to try to start doing that, but hopefully will end up being rewarding in the end and bring me like much better things later in life and everything. And
For sure.
also kind of with that, like being in my head a lot, I think kind of going into some of the next lyrics here, it kind of can often keep me from really appreciating some of the smaller things and simpler things in life, and really living in the moment and appreciating like the people around me and all that. And so I think some of those lyrics after that part where it says, be warm with your greetings, give hopeful goodbyes, laugh with your belly and even more with your eyes. And like some of the lyrics continue on from there, like are just to me reminders to just live in the moment with the people in your life and really appreciate what you have and who you have, and kind of not always get so caught up in the like hustle of life and everything, and so caught up in your head, and just live in the real world and take it slow, and
Mm-hmm.
that things aren't always as big as you make them out to be in your head, like just trying to shrink things down a bit and sort of see things as they are and really just enjoy life a bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that verse because it really speaks to how people perceive you. It speaks to how you make people feel. You know, being warm with your greetings, like being someone that when someone sees you and they say, "Oh, hey," the way that you are in that interaction, hopefully lifts them up. Like if you have a 30-second interaction outside the coffee shop or something, you're leaving and they're walking in. Hopefully they walk into the coffee shop feeling better than they did before they saw you. You know, like hopefully that warmth that you exude when you're interacting with someone that you like, appreciate, care about, hopefully they feel that. You know, it's a tragic idea to care for people and for them to not feel how much you care about them. You know, and that's not always a great big grand thing. You know, like some people you're acquaintances with, and you met them at this party or that event, and so it's not like you know each other well, but even those casual interactions with people that you don't know real well can still be very easily be an uplifting moment. You can walk away from that interaction feeling better than you did coming into it, because there's just something that happens when people have an exchange like that where you're where you're warm and caring and express that interest, that it builds that human connection. It's the opposite of being aloof. It's the opposite of being cool. You know, cool people aren't, you know, enthusiastic. Cool people aren't warm and smiley. You know, cool people aren't complimentary. Cool people are snide. Cool people are indifferent and aloof. Cool people don't get up to dance. Cool people don't, give compliments about how good you look. Cool people are boring. Cool people don't make you feel good to be you. But people who are honest and vulnerable and enthusiastic and warm do. Like, those are the people that people like to be around. We might want the respect of someone who's cool because they don't think anything's cool. So if they think I'm cool, then I must really be cool. But that's not actually, like, cool people don't really like lift you up, but caring people do. And I think that's what this verse is really getting at is about showing up in people's lives in ways that are impactful, ways that they feel, where they walk away feeling better than they did when they first came upon you. And I think I think that's the verse where it talks about about she'll feel it in the way you say her name, right? Yeah, kind of taking that into the realm of romantic relationships where the I think we have a tendency to believe that we can think things in our brain while we're talking to someone and they won't know. And that's not true. People feel what's going on inside you. They don't know what your thought is. If they had to guess, they might be wrong. But whatever you're thinking comes through one way or another, and people feel it. And so, that's speaking to being authentic. When you say the name of the girl you love, it should be authentic. It should feel like it's being said with care and attention, because her name, of all things, should be a beautiful song on your lips. It should be something of reverence. It's if you speak to your partner absent-mindedly and make a habit of it, they'll feel that. They won't feel like you care or have attention for them. Maybe you do care. Maybe you do pay attention. But if you don't speak with care and attention, if you don't put focus into it, if you're distracted, then it comes through hollow and inauthentic. They can't access what you are feeling if you don't put what you're feeling into what you say. And so that verse is all about being kind of unrestrainedly enthusiastic and authentic. It's not about being bubbly. It's just about being real, It's about making sure that when you talk to people you care about, that you are giving them your focus and your attention, and they will feel that. And while you're giving them your focus and your attention, you're being honest and you're being forthcoming, willing to give compliments, willing to be warm, willing to express admiration and gratitude, which can be scarier than a lot of other things. Like, I think that's something maybe we underappreciate is like we feel like it's difficult to confront a friend about a problem, but it might be harder to give a friend a compliment, honestly. Like it is. I'm really speaking for men. I think women have a very different social dynamic, but for men, that kind of vulnerable kindness and appreciation can be very socially frowned upon in a way that makes it very intimidating for men to be forthcoming in these kind of kind, generous, warm ways. But it's just so important. If you don't do it, then it's kind of like when you hear some old codgety grandpa that's always insulting everybody, and it's like, oh, that's just grandpa, that means he loves you. Like, yeah, it's true, it does mean he loves you, but what would everyone's experience have been over the last 75 years of grandpa's life if instead of always being mean and sarcastic, he just said nice things along the way? Not that you can't, be sarcastic or have a rag on each other for fun kind of thing. There's a place for that, but to always show up in those ways and never show up in just honest, direct, vulnerable kindness and warmth it's a tragedy, and it limits, it severely limits, and sometimes destroys relationships to never be able to show up in those ways. And so that might be my favorite verse, just in that kind of encouragement of that kind of dynamic in our speech, and that kind of admonition to not show up in kind of the stereotypical expected ways for men, but to show up in these ways, which are, people might say they're more feminine ways. People might, but that's one of the tragedies, is that it's human. It's not feminine. It's human. It's feminine because women are allowed to express themselves those ways and be respected for it. Men have had less freedom to express themselves in that way and be respected in the same way for it. And I don't know if it's even necessarily that you would lose respect by doing that, but just that that's how it feels. It feels like if I show up warmly, vulnerably, enthusiastically, I'm going to get made fun of. I'm going to be put down. I'm going to not be taken seriously. But it's not true. It's, it goes back to the afraid she'll scorn you, but that's a lie. It's a lie. Like, that's not how people actually enjoy warm people. People actually enjoy people being nice to them. Like, it's not a controversial thought, and yet it's still like a very difficult thing to overcome, being comfortable expressing yourself kindly and warmly to other people, as a man, to family, friends, to neighbors, community members, even strangers.
Yeah, I think this one, kind of as you said with Sail on a Landslide earlier, how you made the music like really match the message you're trying to send with the lyrics. I think this one kind of does that similarly too. Like the instrumental of this song feels very uplifting and comforting and warm in a lot of ways. And is just really soothing to listen to, and kind of opens you up to be vulnerable and really listen in on these lyrics and try to really let them have an impact on you, and so then you can give that outwardly to other people. And yeah, I really like the way this one sounds too.
Thanks. I think musically, this song is mostly very static. Like, it doesn't move around a lot.
Yeah.
The verses are just basically the C chord with a tiny bit of A minor at the end, which is one note away from being a C chord. Like, it's very just kind of staying in that one space and letting you hear these lyrics. That's just basically like a list of how to be. But I think your comment on it being uplifting is interesting, particularly in relation to the piano part. It was I had really just started to play piano, and this was the first thing that I recorded of myself playing piano. This was back in 2018. And I didn't know anything about a piano yet. I had learned a C chord. So I was like, I'm playing a C on the guitar. I'll play the C chord. Boom. And like I said, the song doesn't really, the chord progression doesn't move much. A lot of chord progressions have like 4 chords, and they'll, from chord 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 will kind of take you forward a ways and then back a ways and then even farther forward and then back some more. Like there's direction to how chords move, but with this verse being very static, it was like I had to figure out what to do with the piano part that's not moving. And as a person who doesn't really know how to play the piano, so the piano part ended up being just the C chord mostly. Like throughout the verses, it starts very low, it plays a C chord, and then it just goes up by octaves, continuing to play the C chord all the way up into the high registers of the piano. So it starts down in the bass and ends up at the very high register. So there's just kind of this like it's like a reverse cascade. It lifts up and up and up, and then it kind of sweetly drifts back down before it lifts up and up and up again. So that was right where my brain went when you said that it feels uplifting. It's like, yeah, that's probably the piano part.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about with Say What?
I don't think so. I think we've kind of covered it. Like I said, it's very much a turning point in this album, and it's a turning point in not only bringing the trauma and the pain and the conflict to a halt, but in building something new in its place. It's the groundwork for for where the rest of the album's going to go, and the next song, Role Model, is in a lot of ways kind of a similar idea to Say What, kind of laying more groundwork for what will come in the last few songs. So it's definitely and you can hear it dramatically in the tone change. The album, it starts with It's a Bounty, which is like this song, is very acoustic guitar oriented and bright and happy, beautiful. Happy is not the right word, but beautiful and uplifting. And then songs 2 through 6 go through a very dark journey. And, you know, six, as I said, was a turning point in that journey, but it's still very dark and it's still very painful. And that's, you can hear it and feel it in the music. And then this song comes in right after that. I think the juxtaposition lyrically, admit juxtaposition is not the right word, but the having these songs be back to back, where in the previous song he is in the chorus saying, he's putting up a hand to say stop, saying, I knew the words. I knew the words you're saying. You're using all these words to be hurtful. You're using all these words that are causing damage, and I need you to stop, and I'm going to walk away from this. To then having a song that's all about what words to say and how to say them. And you feel this shift from dark to light. In the very first notes of the song, where the acoustic guitar comes in, just playing that C chord, very bright, very happy, beautiful, uplifting, and the song keeps you there, talking about what words to say, which is what I think we're missing a lot. We get told a lot what not to say growing up. Don't say that. That was mean. Don't say that. Keep that to yourself. But we don't get told a lot what to say, how to say it. And so this song is just really important to me in this position on the album, to bridge that gap between what was and what you want to stop into what you want and what will be. And it is so much of that is always built on what we say and how we say it. People say actions speak louder than words. But man, words speak really loudly. You know, like, words are really loud, like words really matter. And it's all over this album how much words matter. It comes up over and over again. And, you know, yeah, if you can say the right words, and if your actions contradict it, then, you know, that's the truth in the idea that actions speak louder than words. But man, that does not mean words are not critically important, and maybe words might do a lot more. Words are actions. The words we say and the words we don't say, they are actions in the lives of the people that are listening to us. In the lives, when someone wants you to say a thing and you don't say it, that's an action.
Yeah.
That's a hurtful action, you know. When they want you to speak up for them, when they want you to say something caring, nice, and you don't, you let the opportunity pass, that's an act of omission. It's choice, you know. And that, you know, that might be more hurtful than something you could do. So I don't know about actions speak louder than words. I think context matters a lot. Any of it can be bigger and more important. So I guess I just wanted to kind of lean on that idea here before we get into the rest of the songs next time, because you know, the rest of the album is going to get into the good part. There's kind of one more to go that is kind of in this in between with Role Model. But you know, this kind of care and attention to what we say and how we say it, I think is a critical difference maker that is a huge, huge, huge part of what is missing, what Sail on a Landslide was asking about. You know, we know that we need to put food on the table. We know that we need to clothe our children. We know that we need to do these things, but what we say and don't say all the while, it's not something we have much of a roadmap for. And, you know, that's, those things leave a mark. I know a lot of people, myself included, who grew up with roofs over our heads and food on the table, but still grew up with a lot of pain, you know, and a lot of that is because of words said and words not said and how they were said. So I think this aspect is critically important. Maybe words is more of what we do than actions are. So yeah. So that one means a lot, and I think it really sets up the rest to take us home for the end of the album.
No pun intended there.
Pun very much intended.
Well, thank you for sharing these stories about these songs with us, and I look forward to seeing how the rest of the album will unfold and these next few in the next few songs, and as you share your stories with us. So thank you.
Thanks, Jaden. Yeah, next time should be more fun. No, this is great. I really appreciate all your questions and insight, man. Thank you.